look, Chairman, we got like 3.5 minutes here. I mean, let's just do the impeachment. I mean, why continue to waste millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money if we're going to impeach because you believe you've shown he's committed a high crime and misdemeanor? What are you waiting on? Let's just do it. I mean, by the way, we got Chairman Jordan here also, the double chairman. Why aren't you guys calling for the vote in your committee? When is it going to happen? When can we tell the American people you're going to stop wasting their money and just call for the vote on impeachment?
Gentlemen, you?
Sure.
We don't do snap impeachments like you guys. We actually do the facts. We do oversight according to the Constitution.
You're never going to call for it. You're never going to call for it. I mean,
now you can predict. You can predict the future. How do you know?
You guys only have 6 more months probably in power, right, until the election. So are you going to do it in 2 months? Are you going to do it in 3 months? Like, tell the American people.
Does the Constitution put a time limit on oversight? I didn't read that in the Constitution.
If you believe you can't call for the impeachment now, then what you're admitting is you haven't yet proven that he's committed a high crime and misdemeanor. You haven't proven it yet. Otherwise, you would call for it, I assume.
We're doing our work.
Okay, so they haven't proven it, right? They haven't proven he committed a high crime and misdemeanor. Otherwise, we would call for impeachment. So look, the chairman knows me well. I mean, I'm just here to help him, right? And so I just think we should do it today. Let's just call for it. I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. I want to help you out. You can second it, right? Like, make the motion to impeach President Biden. Go ahead. It's your turn. You second it. No, nothing. Okay, we got nothing.
What in the hell is this? The chairman tweets, protect our ducks and kittens in Ohio because he goes down some crazy rabbit hole, completely debunked that aliens are eating pets? My God, are you okay, Mr. Chairman? Because last year, for a very long time, you tweeted and promoted Kanye West as he was calling for genocide against the Jews, and you kept it up. And now, when we have victims coming here, you're tweeting this nonsense. I don't know why you would do this. I hope you're okay. I don't know if the aliens who are eating your ducks are in the room with us right now, but Mr. Chairman, this is a serious issue. These people have loved ones who have been lost, and you tweeted this.
Today's hearing, how the government is trying to take censorship to the next level by weaponizing artificial intelligence tools to limit speech in real time and at scale. AI, which can censor in real time and at scale, should scare us all. The pattern we've seen emerging is deeply troubling, but for the work of this committee, we'd have never known about all the censorship going on, and now we're concerned, obviously, about how artificial intelligence can use these tools, develop these tools to censor and restrict American speech.
You know what? One has a sense that all of this exercise is about projection. And the definition of projection is when an individual or individuals unconsciously or consciously project their thoughts, feelings, or behaviors onto someone else. When we talk about weaponization, like Ambassador Eisen said, we are concerned. But my friends on the other side of the aisle want to persuade the public that the weaponization to worry about is the one that doesn't exist. And hopefully you will not pay attention to the real threat Ambassador Eisen and others have in fact described. There's a monstrous effort going on as we speak to structure a second term for Donald J. Trump. And those proposals inter alia include replacing up to 50,000 federal employees with Trump loyalists, bypassing the civil service protection, and essentially gutting the Pendleton Act of 1883. Invocation of the Insurrection Act on day one to quash public protests against him. A suppression of speech 3 of the 4 witnesses today apparently aren't concerned about.
What this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant in on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election.
I think the gentleman from New York just said that we're trying to chill the federal government. I don't know if it's ever been said that way. It's always the government trying to chill Americans' rights and chill Americans. I've never seen anything.
It's called projection.
I've never seen anything like the government is the one who chills American speech when they pressure big tech to censor, when they ask banks to give them. That's chilling speech, and we've seen it first. Dr. Peterson's seen it in his own country, and now it's coming here. That's what we're concerned about.
No, seriously, is this hearing a joke? This is a committee that now cares about subpoena compliance, and we're going to hold somebody in contempt for subpoena compliance? That's really interesting because, to me, it seems like you believe we all had our memories wiped 608 days ago when you failed to honor your own subpoena.
When the Biden administration told the American people that the virus didn't come from a lab, was that misinformation or disinformation?
Congressman, again, I can't speak to discussions that were had on that topic. It's been a couple of years, but again, generally.
The White House put pressure on us to censor the lab leak theory. This was something the White House cared about, so much so that Facebook was having, the top people at Facebook were having a group discussion on it. So I'm just asking, when they said that, was that misinformation or disinformation?
Congressman, I can't recall the specific example.
When the
because I
Biden
believe it was a
administration
Facebook
said that
exchange.
masks work, was that misinformation or disinformation?
Again, Congressman, we were communicating the best research at the time, but I also believe that that was a discussion that began in the previous administration as well.
How about what Professor Zawicki brought up, Mr. Flaherty, when the White House said there was no such thing as natural immunity? Was that misinformation or disinformation?
Again, Congressman, I am not a medical expert, and my job was to communicate on behalf of a team of medical experts.
So you weren't a medical expert, but you could suggest to Facebook that they needed to change their algorithm so that the American people would not see stuff from the Daily Wire. They'd only see stuff from the New York Times. You can do that, but you can't tell me if they were guessing or lying when they said something that was absolutely not true.
When the President of the United States, the previous president, suggested that perhaps the ingestion of bleach might cure COVID, was that misinformation or disinformation?
Congressman, I can't speak.
All right, got it. And when he suggested perhaps sources of light in certain orifices of the body might also work, was that misinformation or disinformation?
I believe my understanding is that was medically inaccurate, yeah.
And by the way, did that president get COVID?
Congressman, I recall that he did.
And did he get vaccinated?
Congressman, I believe that he did.
Yeah. Well, I seem to recall the chairman of this committee and I actually got vaccinated, I think I'm right, Mr. Jordan, on the same day. We were in the same clinic here on the Hill when the vaccine first got...
That's not accurate.
Oh, is that not? I thought I saw you.
You might have saw me, but I didn't get vaccinated.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, at any rate, he was hanging around.
My office is close to where you got vaccinated. I didn't. Special Counsel Robert Hur stated on page 1 of his report, quote, "Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. Joe Biden not only kept information he wasn't allowed to keep, he shared it with people who weren't allowed to see it. To date, Attorney General Garland has failed to produce the audio tapes. To determine whether Special Counsel Hur appropriately carried out justice by not prosecuting, not recommending for prosecution the president, the recordings are necessary. The transcripts alone are not sufficient evidence of the state of the president's memory, frankly, because the White House has a track record of altering the transcripts. The department has a legal obligation to turn over the requested materials pursuant to the subpoena. Attorney General Garland's willful refusal to comply with our subpoena constitutes contempt of Congress."
It is a height of hypocrisy for the chairman of this committee to try to enforce a contempt subpoena against Merrick Garland when this chairman himself ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena. Now, I've been to a number of proceedings in my time in Congress and in the state legislature that have been relatively stupid. But this proceeding goes beyond stupidity. It is a waste of taxpayer resources. Why is that? Because we have the transcript. We have the transcript of the interview between Special Counsel Robert Hur and President Biden. There's no evidence whatsoever that this transcript was made up, that it's fake, that it's been doctored. This transcript was produced by Robert Hur's office. Robert Hur was appointed by Donald Trump. He is a Republican appointee. The notion that somehow this transcript is fake is a wild, insane conspiracy theory.
What the Republicans want to do with this committee, because we've had hearing after hearing after hearing about some bogus First Amendment violation by private companies, is they want to chill the government from actually interacting with the private companies as we come upon an election in November of 2024.
Chill the government? Oh my God, that's almost as crazy as what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said in the arguments in front of the Supreme Court when she said to the Solicitor General from Louisiana, "Counselor, your position has the First Amendment hamstringing the government." This is not about. This is not about. I know the gentleman from New York is sharper than that.
Mr. Chairman, will you just yield quickly for a brief response?
My 5 minutes. No, it's my 5 minutes, and when I'm done.
Okay,
with
so
5
you're
minutes,
going to attack me and not let me respond?
No, I said I know you're smarter.
said my
than that.
name.
I was complimenting the new.
You said my name. You said I know you're smarter than that, because I did not say anything about the First Amendment being used to chill the government. I said you in this committee are trying to chill government agencies. That's very
We're
different.
trying to protect the First Amendment. We're trying to protect the government from chilling American speech.
18 months in, and we're now 2+ months from the last hearing they've had on this. They won't declare it dead because they need the smear to perpetuate all the way into the election. They just want a cloud hanging over President Biden, because they work as a law firm on behalf of the former twice impeached President Trump. So I don't expect you're going to hear the autopsy report on their impeachment investigation. But the president certainly deserves to hear this. In light of Republicans producing absolutely zero on impeachment, let's just declare from here forward, until they put up some evidence, that Joe Biden has been acquitted of every single MAGA smear. Acquitted. It's over. They're 0 for impeachment. They tried to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, and it took a second serve. They tried. Their own side voted against it. They had to bring one of their members, poor guy is suffering from cancer. They bring him out of his treatment to come in to deliver the 1-vote majority they need to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. And then it goes nowhere in the Senate. It was a second serve impeachment. It was embarrassing.
And you raised this in your testimony, Mr. Fahey. The opportunity cost, when Alvin Bragg did the day one memo, says we are not going to charge all these felonies, we're going to bring them down to misdemeanors and let the bad guys roam the streets of New York. How that squares with what happened here, that to me is the real issue. That's the issue that most Americans see, like, we're going to do this to the former president of the United States, meanwhile, take felony charges against really bad guys on the street and bring them down to misdemeanors. That's the opportunity cost here, I believe, in Manhattan. You get the last word, Mr. Fahey.
Yeah, exactly. When you're letting carjackers out on bail or illegal immigrants that assault police officers aren't getting prosecuted, but this is the way you're using your time, in addition to the fact you run on a soft on crime policy and then you take the most creative, aggressive approach to this crime, it's hard to argue as anything other than a political motivation.
Okay, I got a lot of ground to cover. I do want to clarify, Mr. Fahey, when you consistently talk about or New York crime, you're speaking in an opinionated stance. You're not speaking from a place of fact, correct?
No, I'm speaking from a place of facts.
Okay, well, let me clarify for you. Thank you so much. I'm reclaiming my time. Let me clarify for you that NYPD puts out reports. And in April, it said overall index crime across New York City dropped another 4.9%. As it relates to May, the report says overall index crime across New York dropped another 2.4%, and June's report hasn't come out. I would ask for unanimous consent to enter this into the record.
The department has a legal obligation to turn over the requested material. Attorney General Garland's willful refusal to constitutes contempt of Congress. This resolution upholds the institutional power of the House by recommending that the House find Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for failing to comply with the committee's subpoena. Our oversight and impeachment responsibilities are too important to allow the Attorney General to willfully disregard this.
It's the failure to fully comply with the committee's subpoenas regarding the audio recordings of the Biden and Zwonitzer interviews that has hindered the House's ability to adequately conduct oversight over Special Counsel Hur regarding his investigative findings and the President's retention and disclosure of classified materials, and has impeded the committee's impeachment inquiry.
Can we also just talk about subpoenas for 1 second? Because 2 of your last speakers are 750 plus days in defiance of a subpoena. So get real when Mr. Jordan and Mr. Biggs come to this floor and want to talk and get all righteous about subpoenas. You start honoring your subpoenas, and we can talk about anyone else's subpoena.
Let's look at maybe the best evidence we have is the actual screenshot. Can you put the screenshot up on the screen? Let's look at what the text message said. The text message said, implement best practices. Like, this is the best practices. We're going to implement them. And they talk about making sure you're going in pairs or with more than one person, avoid the Trump homes, drink your water, take your towel, coconut waters. So stay hydrated, walk with someone else, and don't go to the Trump homes. It seems pretty common and matter of fact in the actual evidence we do have, the text message itself. But you're still saying Miss Washington and this other person aren't telling the truth.
When I received this text message, it was not in accordance with the way we conduct business at FEMA, and I directed
Even though it said
termination.
best practices, even though it said stay hydrated, which everyone would agree with, even though it said go in pairs, which everyone would agree with, even though it said bring a towel, make sure you're covered. I mean, it said coconut water is the best way to stay, even though it said all these practical things, the part about avoiding the Trump homes, that's not a best practice, that's not commonplace. Is that what you're saying?
That is nowhere in our policy, and I can't speak to
I'm
the
not saying it's in your
motivations
policy.
behind what Ms. Washington did.
But it was, okay, now her supervisor, this Mr. Hershey, have you talked to him and to find out if he knew this was happening?
I understand that he was in her chain of command, and this is under investigation.
Have you talked to there's 13 people on this text message. Have you talked to all 13 of those individuals?
This incident is under investigation.
That's not what I asked you. I
Office-
know it's under investigation, and we know how investigations work when it's done inside the agency. It takes forever. I'm asking, did you talk to the 13 people on this best practices text message?
The Office of Professional Responsibility has taken this, and they are following appropriate protocol to investigate.
Is the Inspector General looking at it as well?
And I have asked the Inspector General to take a look at this. I
Any
welcome their
idea
review.
when they're going to talk to these 13 people since you have it? Have you talked to, how about you personally? Have you talked to any of these 13 people?
I have not talked to them.
You have not talked to
personally.
any of them?
I have an entire team that focuses on this investigation, and that's what they're doing.
Seems to me it's part of a mindset that's in government. And this is the scary part, because I think it's broader.
Let's be honest about what's happening here today. My Republican colleagues want to cherry pick this incident and sensationalize it. Well, the reality is that for decades, there has been different treatment by FEMA, for instance, towards Black and brown communities. Hurricanes Katrina, Maria, Ida, Florence, Harvey. We all saw communities of color served last or not at all. And those are difficult to discuss, but important. Several reports and investigations confirmed what those of us who are part of those communities already knew, that white disaster victims were helped first and with more money than Black people of color, even when the damage was the same. Rather than fixate on a single incident, this committee should be working to ensure that the entire system is equitable for all Americans and that we're building on the work of the administration to make that so.
I'm here for a celebration because, let's raise a glass. It's been about 2 years this week. May 12 is when Jim Jordan, our chairman, was subpoenaed and asked to comply with his subpoena for his role, his interaction with the former president on the January 6th attack of the Capitol. And so we are now 735 days in. It's 2 years, and this committee has the nerve, this committee has the temerity to seek compliance from the Attorney General. I actually think you should not be able to bring any subpoena of another person if you are out of compliance of your own subpoena. That seems to make a lot of sense to me, and we'll have an amendment to address that a little bit later. This is about doing everything to help Donald Trump, who you see as your client, who a New York criminal trial sees as a defendant, to help him win an election. So I have no interest in playing this game. The American people have no interest in playing this game. And all this does, for those of you who have graced us with your presence, animates that it's a completely do-nothing Congress.
Gentleman from California recognized.
Which one?
Oh, we'll go down the line. I'll do whatever you, Swalwell, okay.
I'm sorry to each of you for the circumstances that have brought you here. I'm truly sorry that this has happened to your loved ones. And the persons responsible for the deaths of Weston, Arlene, Rachel, Kayla, and Jocelyn should die in jail and then rot in hell. That's what they deserve. I believe in security. I want barriers on our southern border at every place it makes sense. I don't want anyone to come into our country if we don't know who they are. I was a prosecutor. I'm probably one of the only persons in this room who's actually prosecuted and put away for the rest of their life some of the most violent people in our community. I'm the son of a cop. My brothers are cops. The two of them walk the beat every single day. I believe we can have security first and also address a workforce crisis and find a pathway to earned citizenship in our country. But I want to be real with you. Congress is divided, and it's hard to get everything you want. On gun violence, I want an assault weapons ban and background checks. We have a divided Congress, and so we had to settle for Republicans and Democrats coming together for the Safer Communities Act. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And fewer kids will die in their classrooms today because Congress compromised. I want to be real with you. They don't want a compromise. Donald Trump walked away from the second most conservative Republican in the Senate offering a compromise. Don't take my word for it. Take theirs.
The border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling.
But I would acknowledge President Trump failed, along with Republicans. They failed in 2018 to actually move a border security bill to tighten this so that we weren't dealing with this crisis right now.
We all felt that border was a complete disaster, myself included. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all.
It's your colleagues in your party, sir, who torpedoed this, who didn't get the facts right on what you just outlined was in that measure. They killed it. Ironically, not Democrats.
Right.
Each of you came here today, not easily, but you expected a serious forum. You are serious. This issue is serious. They are not serious. The chairman yesterday tweeted, "Are the aliens?" The chairman yesterday tweeted, "When President Trump was in office, the border was secure and illegal aliens weren't eating your pets." He also then tweeted, again, knowing that you're going to come here to talk about your loved ones who were lost, you would expect some seriousness, some gravitas, respect for the people who came here. What in the hell is this? I am sorry that you came here expecting seriousness. You are serious. They are not. And you deserve a hell of a lot more than what you're getting from them. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Ambassador Eisen, let's go through a speed round if we can. You, if you can, tell me who said this. The American people deserve to know that President Trump has asked me to put him over my oath to the Constitution. Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. Who said that?
Vice President Mike Pence.
And his party?
His party is the Republican Party.
Thank you. Here's another one. Very good. I think he's unfit for office. He puts himself before country. His actions are all about him and not about the country. Who said that? Okay.
Hold on, Mr. Connolly.
Hurry up.
Chairman, Trump's defense secretary,
Excellent.
Mr. Esper.
You are good. You are good. Republican appointee, former Trump Secretary of Defense. All right, this one. A person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. There's nothing more that can be said. God help us. Who said that?
That one is the former Chief of Staff, Kelly. Mr. Kelly.
And also a Republican appointee to the Republican president.
A Republican appointee.
That's
I don't
right.
know if he himself is a Republican. He's long-term military person.
Excellent. So far, you're batting 100. If he were elected to a second term, this time he might do damage that would be irreparable. This is a very dangerous period we're about to enter into here.
That one I know. He and I have had some differences over the years. We tried to get him to come testify in the impeachment, and we were unsuccessful. That's Bolton, Ambassador Bolton, my fellow ambassador.
So why do you think, Ambassador, given all of those... Yes, I'm sorry, 100%. 100%. You get perfect score. Very good. But why do you think the majority here in this committee and in other committees want to kind of ignore those warnings from prominent Republicans, not squishy Republicans, not even sort of pseudo-Democrats, about what could happen in a second term in terms of weaponization?
Mr. Connolly, I had the honor of working with those on both sides of the dais. We haven't always agreed on the issues. Privately, we have had conversations where we agree and disagree. It would be my preference if, in addition to the important questions that we've heard today, and I have my points of agreement and disagreement with the others who the majority has invited. Mr. Lukianoff and I were talking before the hearing about our shared orientation on regulation of AI. I would prefer, I won't guess or impugn motives, but I would prefer and I would urge publicly or privately if we could work together at least on the Insurrection Act.
Well, if I can interrupt you, we won't question motives, but we certainly will question the agenda. And that's why I began with the definition of the word projection. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on with my colleague from North Dakota, the notion that subpoenas are not sufficient to get information and that every ounce of evidence must be obtained by a search warrant has, of course, been repeatedly rejected by the Supreme Court over and over and over. And this hearing, the reason why, as Mr. Armstrong says, we are talking about January 6th is because, as I understand it, this hearing was initially spurred on by an FBI whistleblower who is not here testifying today. The one who ostensibly had the information about alleged wrongdoing is not here to stand in front of us, to testify under oath, to be questioned by members of both sides. Mr. Knight, I want to ask you a hypothetical. Let's say that there's a riot and an attack on our democracy on a particular day. We'll just call it January 6th for the purpose of this hypothetical. Let's say that the FBI has information that an individual was near the site of the riot that day. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that individual purchased a firearm in the past 6 months. And let's say that the FBI had evidence that that same person planned to return 2 weeks later to interfere with another democratic process involving the President of the United States. Is it actually your testimony here today to say that it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment for the FBI to seek bank records for that individual?
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So, at least based upon the public information I have available, they did not know on an individualized basis that people were planning to return to cause violence. And I think that's a distinction that's worth noting.
That's fine. I agree with you. That's not in the hypothetical. They just knew they were going to return.
I believe you said something along the lines of evidence that they were coming back
to interfere. You're right.
Interfere.
Let's just say that. Do you think the Fourth Amendment prohibits the FBI from getting bank records for that individual if they don't know that they are going to commit violence?
I think that's an easy warrant to get.
A warrant?
Yeah, I think that would be an easy warrant to get from a judge.
So you're now saying that you need to get a warrant for bank records?
I am saying you should have to get a warrant for bank records. The status quo is you do not.
You disagree with the Supreme Court, which has upheld the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act.
So if you'd like to talk about the Supreme Court precedent in the Bank Secrecy Act, I think that Carpenter, which is a far more recent case, points to some very strong questions about the constitutionality of the Bank Secrecy Act. I've written something about it. I'm happy to send to your office.
I understand. And by the way, I agree. I mean, but Carpenter also demonstrates that the Supreme Court is evolving and is evolving on the Fourth Amendment, and there's no question, and I will tell you as a former prosecutor, if I had that predication, I would fire off a subpoena to that bank every single day, 10 out of 10 times.
Well, respectfully, sir, it doesn't seem like they even use subpoenas
I have to move
here.
on. I have to move on because I think it's absolutely absurd that we are sitting here trying to make an argument that somehow the Fourth Amendment is being violated when there is specific, reasonable suspicion about every individual whose bank records were obtained because they bought a gun, they were at the insurrection, and they were going to come back. The fact of the matter is, we are once again here on a completely sham rationale. There was no First Amendment or Fourth Amendment violation around January 6th. No. This is simply another effort to whitewash what happened on January 6th. One of the members of the committee calls those who were convicted of crimes hostages, while there are actual American hostages sitting in Gaza right now under captivity of a terrorist organization. And we're supposed to equate the people sitting in jail who rioted and attacked this Capitol, we're supposed to equate them with these hostages. Mr. Chairman, you continually say that it used to be that both parties agreed with the First Amendment. It didn't used to be. It is. It remains the case. We all agree with the First Amendment, but the problem is that the First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says, and there are limits, and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant in on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election. That is why this committee exists.
The time of the gentleman.
And we have gotten no evidence to support any of these allegations.
Now, moving on, I just want to level set because I feel as if some people don't understand how government works, and I don't know how they got to Congress. So, Mr. Wu, I'm gonna need you to help me out because I don't know that I trust that other people will know the answers to these questions. Number one, how many branches of government do we have?
3.
3, okay, sounds good. So, can you name them for me?
Legislative, judiciary, and executive.
Very good. Okay, so currently, I think that I serve in the legislative branch. Would you agree?
I agree.
Okay, fine. Can you tell me when somebody goes to court, such as a criminal convicted of 34 felony counts, state court in New York, would that be the legislative people or judicial people?
Well, it's really the executive that's prosecuting, and then it's within the judiciary to run the trial properly.
Okay, very good. So, judiciary. So, typically, if someone has an issue with, say, what happens in court, do they then somehow hop from state court all the way to the federal legislative branch, or is there a different process in which you are supposed to be able to explain any issues you may have?
Process would be the judicial appellate process, holding aside the issue of state versus federal.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. So normally people don't get convicted on a state level and somehow end up litigating the issue on the federal level in the legislative branch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So something is different about what's going on today. I just wanted to clarify because I thought I was living in the upside down for a second. Now, I want to move on and talk about how someone is prosecuted. Currently, because under Project 2025, we'll get there, there will be a different way to prosecute people. But currently, it is my understanding, and I only kind of went to law school, passed a couple of bar exams, and practiced on the state and federal levels, but just clarify for me, when someone goes in to be prosecuted, is it, say, the President of the United States that somehow becomes the state prosecutor in New York?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not, because he's the executor, huh? That's that other branch.
Correct.
That's the, okay. All right, so you have this prosecutor, and in this case, it's Alvin Bragg, who was duly elected, correct?
Correct.
Not appointed by the president, correct?
Right.
Duly elected by the citizens in his jurisdiction, right?
Right.
So he's elected, and usually there's some sort of an investigation that takes place, correct?
Prior to his election? Or?
No. With a case, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I've
correct.
moved on.
Yes.
All right. So the very first part of a case is that we go through an investigation. After that investigation, then the prosecutor usually has what we would consider to be some sort of prosecutorial discretion as to whether or not they want to go forward, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then they use that discretion, but then when it's somebody that is facing a felony amount of time, which is usually in most states over a year, then they have to present it to a grand jury. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, a grand jury is comprised of citizens, correct?
Correct.
U.S. citizens from that area, correct?
Right.
Okay, so they have to come to the conclusion that they are going to issue what we call a true bill, correct?
Correct.
All right, so then we have an indictment. And then there's pretrial motions, there's pretrial hearings, all kinds of stuff, right?
Right.
All right, and then ultimately, depending on where you are, you have the opportunity to say, hey, I want a jury trial, correct?
Correct.
And a jury trial is comprised of U.S. citizens again, right?
Right.
Okay, very good. All right, so can you tell me so far if all of this took place in the case in New York?
Yes, it did.
Oh, okay. All right, so you get to trial. Now, when you show up to trial and you're facing a felony amount of time, as a defendant, are you not entitled to an attorney?
Yes, you are.
And your attorney is allowed to pick the jury, they're allowed to present evidence, and ultimately, it is a jury of your peers who decides whether or not you are guilty or not, correct?
Correct.
And in this case,
the picking has the judge involved too.
And in this case, they found him guilty not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4, not 5, not 6. I could keep going on, but 34 counts were given. So the opinions of these people who were not juries is not what we do in this country. In this country, we have a system in which jurors decide who is found guilty, and if you have a problem with that, you go to the appellate court, which the last time I checked, he was raising money so that he could go to the appellate court and appeal his decision, and they will have the final say so. Thank you so much.
Chairman Jordan may believe that everyone on this committee has amnesia, because for the last 18 months, almost every time we have come into this room, we've been promised evidence of crimes that'll impeach President Biden. Over and over, noun, verb, impeachment. And President Biden has been subjected to the worst accusations. He and his family have been called the worst, and you've been promised the most as it relates to what's going to be delivered. I think it's cute, it's adorable that we're having this hearing now on oversight of the border, and we're gonna go back in time and question whether the vaccine for COVID really worked. That's great. But we're not going to erase what was promised to the American people because Chairman Jordan doesn't have the goods. We've got the goods. We've got the receipts. And I want you to know what you were promised and what you're now going to be given is something completely different. So, Joe Biden sold out emergency fuel reserves to a Chinese company tied to Hunter Biden. That's an impeachable offense, said Judiciary Committee member Andy Biggs. President Biden himself may have committed impeachable offenses relating to treason, bribery, or other crimes, says Congressman Jody Arrington. His actions as vice president are a blatant crime and an impeachable offense. The tragedy is Washington has known about these crimes for years and done nothing, says motion to vacate author Marjorie Taylor Greene. Certainly, impeachable acts have been committed by President Biden, says Clay Higgins. All these are impeachable offenses, and to my Republican colleagues who say, no, it's not, that's maladministration, they're wrong, Rep. Chip Roy. Paul Gosar says Joe Biden obstructs Hunter Biden's cooperation with impeachment inquiries, speaking of subpoenas, add obstruction of justice to the list of impeachable offenses committed by Joe Biden. Greg Murphy, I don't throw around the word impeachment lightly. I don't throw around the word impeachment lightly, but in my view, President Biden has committed two major impeachable offenses. Doug LaMalfa says, Joe Biden obstructs Hunter Biden's cooperation with impeachment inquiries, speaking of subpoenas, add obstruction of justice to the list of impeachable offenses committed by Joe Biden. And James Comer, he's got a couple doozies. Overwhelming evidence shows President Biden lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's corrupt international and domestic business schemes. And then he said, this is the guy who's in cahoots with Chairman Jordan to impeach Joe Biden. I mean, there's no doubt that Joe Biden committed impeachable offenses. Sounds like there's some doubt. It sounds like there's some doubt. Every day, the House of Representatives has worked as the largest law firm in Washington, D.C., on behalf of just one client. And they brought all of this nonsense into this room, promising evidence of impeachment. And they've delivered zero. But you know who has actually delivered? The FBI. Because they keep arresting the best witnesses they have for their own work on behalf of Russia and China. So they bring these witnesses, they make these allegations, and the FBI says, actually, the guy that you're relying on, he's been telling you lies that have been fed by Russia. Their own Intelligence Committee chairman, this is a Republican, said that most of the claims going on in this building about Russia on their side is Russia propaganda being filtered to them by the Russians. So I don't expect you're going to hear the autopsy report on their impeachment investigation. But the president certainly deserves to hear this. In light of Republicans producing absolutely zero on impeachment, let's just declare from here forward until they put up some evidence that Joe Biden has been acquitted of every single MAGA smear. And now this hearing today is about the border. We want to help fix the border. In fact, the second most conservative member of the Senate, according to the American Conservative Union, is James Lankford of Oklahoma, the second most conservative member of the Senate. He has the crazy idea that we should surge resources to the border, put more judges there to adjudicate claims of asylum, give the president the authority to shut down the border if it's being overwhelmed. And the president, in good faith, engages. Many Democrats, including myself, in good faith, engage. And then Donald Trump realizes, wait, if we solve the border crisis, I can't politicize the border crisis. And so he tells them, don't pass that bipartisan legislation. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, said, I'm not giving up. This is not about Trump, and it's not about me. It's about our country. Senator Todd Young from Indiana said, I hope no one is trying to take this away for campaign purposes. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, said, how does Trump know it's a betrayal if he hasn't read it? I mean, don't be ignorant, read the bill. And James Lankford, the author of the bill, said, it's interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. And now, it's interesting. A few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year. One side wants the fix, one side wants the fiction. That's entirely what this is about. So we'll engage you in this exercise, and you can send your letters about what you'd like to see on the border, but we actually stand ready to get things done. What you're seeing today is not oversight. It's overkill. And I yield back. You see, on May 31, 2022, as the January 6th committee was investigating the greatest crime ever committed in America, with the most arrests, the most convictions, a crime against our Congress, our Constitution, our democracy, all they wanted was for you and a few of your colleagues to cooperate, to provide any information you had. And what you all did, for 608 days and counting, you didn't show up. And you want us to take this proceeding seriously, where you have an issue with somebody else's compliance with a subpoena, somebody who actually is willing to come forward publicly, something you were not willing to do, something you and Mr. McCarthy and others who were asked to testify were not willing to do. So seriously, is this a joke? If it's a joke, great. This whole Congress has been a joke, so it would be in line and on brand with what has been taking place. But I have to ask, like, how dumb do you think the American people are that you would seek to hold someone in contempt when you are 608 days, 15 hours, 21 minutes, and 47 seconds out of compliance of your own subpoena? I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if it is your practice to look the other way when crimes are committed, but it's not my practice, and it's not my colleagues' practice. So what is this really all about? It's about this chairman, Speaker Johnson, and the MAGA majority acting as Insurrection LLP, creating the biggest law firm in Washington, D.C., to work every single day in this building on behalf of just one client, the former president, Donald Trump, and to carry out his petty grievances every single day. Okay, that's great. You won the majority. It's your prerogative. But the cost to the American people is we aren't doing a single thing in this committee to address gun violence, the mass shootings that occurred in the 3 weeks that we were gone. We haven't done anything to address what's going on at the border, a president who's willing to negotiate and find ways to better secure it. We're not doing anything to bring down the cost of health care and take on the pocketbook, financial breathing room issues that the American people care about. Okay, let's talk about Hunter. Mr. Comer and Mr. Jordan said, we want Hunter Biden to come in. Hunter Biden said, okay, I will come in. Mr. Comer said 2 different times, we will take his testimony publicly or we will take it privately. We will take it publicly or we will take it privately. Hunter Biden said, okay, let's do it publicly. I don't trust you all to take it privately because you haven't released the depositions that you have taken privately. Can't blame him for that. He wants to come in and testify publicly. You won't take yes for an answer, and so then you move it to let's take it privately. I think you want to take it privately because you have nothing. I think you want to take it privately because you don't want to see Marjorie Taylor Greene display the non-consensual nudes from Hunter's laptop again. I think that's why you want to take it privately. But he comes in anyway. You won't take yes for an answer. And let me just break some news for you, Mr. Chairman. Just down the hallway, Hunter Biden is sitting in the Oversight Committee. He's ready to testify publicly, it appears. So let me just challenge you one more time. If you're so eager to take his testimony publicly, I move that we adjourn right now and take his public testimony and bring him in here right now.
Is the gentleman making a motion?
Yes.
Question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Opinion of the
Recorded
chair,
vote.
the noes have it.
Recorded vote.
Request a recorded vote.
Mr. Chairman, there are 12 ayes and 15 noes.
The motion to adjourn is not agreed to. Gentleman from California yields back. He yielded back. Oh, I'm sorry. The chair
I yield
recommend-
back.
Chair recognizes himself. I would just say this: why didn't they hold me in contempt?
I move to hold you.
Why didn't the committee hold me? They certainly could have. It was a completely partisan
moved.
Would the gentleman yield? And I'll explain why.
No. In a second, I want to finish my my time here. It was a completely partisan committee. Why not do it? I mean, the idea that if you could have held the future Speaker of the House, the future Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the Freedom in contempt, why didn't you do it? I think they didn't do it because they knew it was bogus. They knew that the speech or debate clause would not allow them to compel someone member of Congress to come testify. But by the way, I never said I wouldn't testify. I wrote an 11-page letter to the chairman, to Chairman Thompson. I'm still waiting on a response, where I spelled out all the concerns we had with this committee, all the things we had caught them saying that were not accurate.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, it's my 5 minutes. I'll yield, and we'll have plenty of time. I'm sure there'll be a debate. They never made a record of it. We made a record of Hunter Biden not showing last week. We actually had a court reporter there. We made a record of him not showing up for his deposition when he was over doing a press conference on the Capitol, outside the Capitol. So I think the Democrats know how ridiculous that was. And with that, I would yield to the gentleman from California.
So I want to show some photos from an information slideshow that was presented to social media companies by the CDC to inform these companies of false information. What Professor Zawicki apparently refers to as hectoring by you, Mr. Flaherty, and you, Mr. Slavitt. These slides also included facts provided by the CDC of correct scientific-based information. And I want to take a moment to go through some of these posts that the government identified for social media companies as false information. That hectoring that seems to bother Professor Zawicki. It basically, on the screen, as you can see, there was a theory floating around in social media in the first half of 2021 that said COVID vaccines cause humans to become magnetic. For example, one of these posts states the magnetism from the vaccine reportedly spreads throughout the body over time. And it shows pictures of a person's arm in the middle there with spoons attached to it from the magnetic attraction. Mr. Slavitt, is there any evidence at all that COVID vaccines caused human skin to become magnetic?
No, Congressman, not that I'm aware of.
So after I get the vaccine, I don't need to start holding forks and spoons in my arm to see if they stick?
Yeah, nothing that I'm aware of. I think
nothing that you're. And there are, quote, self-reproducing nanoparticles in the vaccines that take over our bodies that cause metal objects to stick to you. That's also false?
Yeah, that was a common internet rumor, but that was not true.
I wouldn't. So what did you were concerned after? I mean, during COVID, that we best know of, 1.2 million Americans died. Almost everyone in the country got COVID at one point or another. I got it twice. Almost all of us, like you, Mr. Flaherty, lost family members or friends who succumbed to the virus. And I don't know, I have a different interpretation perhaps of your actions, which is you were desperate to get correct information out to protect lives. And we didn't, in the beginning, we didn't know everything we needed to know about COVID. It was a brand new virus, not a lot of studies. We weren't sure what worked and what didn't. We weren't sure about protections. But that's hardly you engaged in a disinformation campaign, nor is it hardly you trying to crack down on the free expression of ideas that can jeopardize lives. Would that be a fair characterization, Mr. Flaherty, of your motivation?
I think that would be a fair characterization, Congressman.
If we can go to another photo real quick. This one says, the magnetic skin condition were emerging daily, and there were verified reports that whoever took the COVID vaccine was going to be magnetic. Mr. Slavitt, was this post accurate?
I don't believe so.
And this one got to Moderna. It actually slandered Moderna vaccine by saying it contained a deadly poison that was not even approved for veterinary use, let alone human use. Many of us got the Moderna vaccine. Has it ever contained ingredients that are fatal or carcinogenic, or that cause infertility or nerve, liver, or kidney damage that you know of?
I don't believe so. I think that vaccine has been given hundreds of millions of times in the United States. Not aware of it.
I just think it's important that when we use words like disinformation, misinformation, or hectoring of U.S. government officials who are trying to save lives, that we see the other side. There was a real problem. And people lost their lives because they believed that stuff. And it had no basis in scientific fact, and it jeopardized lives in the middle of a pandemic, the worst pandemic in over 100 years. I yield back.
Gentleman's time expired. He yields back. Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stubbe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are seeing a pattern here now, a year and a half into this Congress, and we see it with the impeachment investigation, and we are seeing it starkly here. Let's make a lot of really bold allegations and then try to weave in and mislead some evidence to justify them. It certainly happened in the impeachment, and it is happening here again, because in order to, quote, coerce or censor, then that means, A, whoever the private company that receives the communication from the government must feel coerced and act on that information, and B, they would not have done that but for the government intervention. And the problem that we continue to have with my Republican colleagues is they can get the first thing, but they never get the second. That is why evidence is important, and that's why we rely on evidence. So when colleagues over on the other side of the aisle talk about a TikTok ban, they are misrepresenting what the bill did. The bill required ByteDance to divest from TikTok, not to ban TikTok. And that is so consistent with all of the cherry picking of these emails that we have seen here today. I want to bring up another example, which was actually the focus of an entire hearing on this topic, but has not been mentioned once today. And that is the email from Clark Humphrey to Twitter related to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s tweet about blaming Hank Aaron's death on the COVID vaccine. And this was the center of the Republican case up until today, and now we're moving on. And I want to just stress why. Clark Humphrey wrote, wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP. Oh my goodness, coercion. That is censorship. It's some industrial complex. But you know what the problem was? It wasn't taken down. It wasn't taken down. Twitter received that email from the White House and did not act on it. Mr. Seligman, is there possible to have coercion when someone does not do what the other person asks?
No.
Now, we've heard a lot on the other side of the aisle. I think my friend Mr. Stubbe talked so much about March 2nd, all the emails to Amazon and trying to ban books. Well, we were not allowed to enter into the record some of the testimony from the employee who received those emails at Amazon, but I'm going to go through this transcript because this employee was asked about that email. Even though you anticipated that you might be asked to remove content when you had a live conversation with Mr. Flaherty, you in fact were not asked to remove any content. Question? Answer, that's my recollection, yes. So I just want to be clear, to your knowledge, did anyone from the US government, including Mr. Flaherty or Mr. Slavitt, both of whom are witnesses here, ever coerce Amazon into removing content from its platforms? No. The answer, as the ranking member pointed out with so many other companies, was that they made their independent decisions what to do with the content based on information provided from public health experts like Mr. Slavitt and the CDC and how that applies to their own policies. So you cannot have a First Amendment violation when a private company is making its own independent decisions, as every single company as part of this investigation did. So what is this all about? It's not actually about proving a First Amendment violation. What the Republicans want to do with this committee, because we've had hearing after hearing after hearing about some bogus First Amendment violation by private companies, is they want to chill the government from actually interacting with the private companies as we come upon an election in November of 2024. Russia interfered through social media in 2016. Russia tried to interfere in 2020. And you can bet Russia is trying to interfere in our election in 2024. And the only way that these social media companies can know that is by being provided with information from the United States government and their law enforcement investigations. And if that can't happen, then Donald Trump and these Republicans benefit because Russia will help them. That is why we're here, and that is why this is bogus. And I yield back.
Time of the gentleman expired. Gentleman from North Dakota is recognized.
Gentleman is recognized.
This is not about the contempt of the Attorney General. It's about MAGA Republicans' contempt for the Constitution, the rule of law, and democracy. And it's about who any of us came here to fight for. MAGA Republicans are fighting for one person at the cost of what your constituents actually care about. You're fighting for a felon. You're fighting for a felon. On this side, we're fighting for working people. We're fighting for the kids and the teachers and the soldiers and the cops and the firefighters and the bakers and the butchers, people who go to work every day and count on us to do something for them. And you're working for a felon. A felon. 12 of his neighbors, people in the community where he committed crimes, made 34 decisions, and 408 straight times they said guilty. So let me make it clear where we stand. We will choose families over felons, verdicts over vengeance, and people over politics. And will the ranking member yield me one more minute?
An additional minute.
And can we also just talk about subpoenas for 1 second? Because 2 of your last speakers are 750 plus days in defiance of a subpoena. So get real when Mr. Jordan and Mr. Biggs come to this floor and want to talk and get all righteous about subpoenas. You start honoring your subpoenas, and we can talk about anyone else's subpoena.
It's nice to see that some of my colleagues on the other side could make it today. I don't know if that means that there weren't enough seats in the courtroom in New York, but I know that the Oversight Committee canceled a hearing that was supposed to happen right now on this matter so that they could be at the president's trial. I know some members will miss this vote because they want to be at the president's trial. And I don't think that anything could animate the phrase, "do nothing Congress," more than missing votes and canceling hearings to go up and be a spectator at your cult leader's trial. That is the definition of do nothing Congress. But I want to talk about this particular effort to hold the Attorney General in contempt, because what is this really about? After all, it was Donald Trump's appointed prosecutor who the Attorney General deputized to be the special counsel here to look at President Biden's handling of classified documents. So it was Donald Trump's prosecutor who cleared President Biden. He said, there's nothing to see here. And in fact, although he did not put it in the lead memo for his report, there was an exchange that he acknowledged in the interview with President Biden where the special counsel told the president, your recall is photographic. He didn't say your recall is good. He didn't say your recall is decent. The special counsel said, your recall is photographic. So what is this really about? This is about you all not accepting the outcome of the 2020 election. You rooted on the rioters as they sought to attack the Capitol on January 6th. If that wasn't enough, you all went back to the floor and relitigated the issues that brought the rioters to the Capitol just 8 hours later. Many of you go and visit the convicted criminals who assaulted the police officer at their jail cells. And during Police Week, as a bunch of officers yesterday testified in the Homeland Security hearing that those officers are heroes and those rioters are criminals, You call them hostages, and the former president calls them hostages. So this is entirely about not accepting the outcome of the January 6th vote here, rooting on the rioters, and doing everything you can to try and affect the outcome of the upcoming election. And so then I thought to myself, is there like a parallel? Is there another investigation where your side was completely incurious about what that investigation yielded? Turns out there was. Turns out it happened recently. Turns out somebody on your side was investigated for sex trafficking. Now you're going to say, well, he was cleared. They dropped the charges. Yes, the Biden Attorney General dropped the charges, didn't pursue, didn't bring charges. That's exactly what happened with President Biden. But you all have shown no interest to go to the Attorney General and say, well, we want to learn more. We want to see the notes and the audio recordings and the evidence of our own colleagues' sex trafficking investigation. Not a peep from any one of you. So if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to show just a little bit of consistency, I would be willing to entertain that you have a genuine interest in understanding what happened in that hearing. But that's not what this is about.